Well, that certainly was the most Indy 500 of all time. We have a absolute metric butt ton of stuff to discuss. I have many thoughts, and I'm sure you guys are going to share those in the comments. So here goes nothing. So the first thing I want to get off the bat is that Joseph Newgarden absolutely deserved to win this Indianapolis 500. He was one of the fastest cars all month, one of the fastest drivers. He put it all on the line to win this race, and I don't want to take a single thing away from him because I think Joseph, Team Penske, they played it absolutely right in a race that was extremely challenging, extremely difficult. All of those factors that we are going to discuss at length in this video were at play for everyone in this race, including Joseph Newgarden. And for him to step up at that time in that kind of a situation and win this race, you can't take it away from him, 100%. And at the end of the day, this is a crown, or at least a jewel on his crown that he's going to have for the rest of his life. His face is going to be on that Borg-Warner trophy for the rest of his life. And for someone who came up in the American open wheel ranks, for someone who won so many races, who did so well so often in IndyCar for Sarah Fisher Hartman Racing, and then eventually coming over to Team Penske, this is a good thing. He is going to be a great champion for the Indianapolis 500. The only thing that I'm going to say is that I just wish he hadn't won under these circumstances because, yes, we're using the word controversy a lot. It feels controversial. It feels like 2002 in my opinion. And we'll get into it, obviously, and I'm sure you guys will have your own opinions that you will talk about in the comment section below. But at the end of the day, the person who was drinking the milk was Joseph Newgarden, and I believe he 100% earned it. So I think it's the best that we look at the field of 33 as they cross the line and discuss at not length, but in brief, each of the drivers in this year's Indianapolis 500. And in the fourth closest finish in Indy 500 history, the new Indy 500 champion, Joseph Newgarden, won over the departing Indy 500 champion, Marcus Ericsson, in second place. What a duel for one lap between Newgarden and Ericsson. Ericsson certainly had some interesting things to say at the end of the race. We'll talk about them in a little bit, but again, great for Joseph Newgarden and a great race for Marcus Ericsson. Also a great race for Santino Ferrucci and AJ Foyt Racing. The Foyt team has been suffering with the death of AJ's wife, Lucy, and they have just had a great day. Third for the Foyt team. I can't even remember the last time they finished that well. The last time they ran up at the front was with Tony Kanaan in 2018, but certainly they have never had a finish this good in a very long time. And Santino Ferrucci continues what is an absolutely unbelievable string of top 10 finishes. He's never finished outside the top 10. A podium at the Indy 500 is the icing on the cake thus far. Alex Palou, the pole sitter, tough day for him, and it's hard to say that when the guy's in fourth position in the field, but he was up and down after getting contact with Rinus VeeKay on the pit lane, knocking off his front wing and killing any chance of him winning the 500. It's a miracle he got back to fourth, but for Alex Palou, what is more than likely his final Indy 500 for Chip Ganassi Racing ends without a victory. Alexander Rossi was one of the top picks to win, in my opinion, gets to fifth, never quite was in contention to win the race, but he was up there all day. Alexander Rossi, a good finish for his first Aero McLaren SP Indy 500. And Scott Dixon, the Dixon curse continues. Hasn't won the race since 2008, and it seems like something new and unique takes him out of the 500 every single year. This year, it was a tire vibration, but somehow Dixon got back to sixth place. That's grit, that's tenacity from Scott Dixon. P7, Takuma Sato. Everyone, a lot of people had him pegged as the winner. Ended up taking seventh place for Taku in what is planned to be his last race for Chip Ganassi Racing. I guess we'll wait and see on that one. Connor Daly in eighth position, another great top 10 for the Ed Carpenter Racing driver, but not quite as good this year at getting to the front. But Connor, good solid top 10. A great top 10 for Colton Herta after contact with Romain Grosjean. It looked like he was going to be in the mix at the end until that pit lane contact with Romain Grosjean, his teammate. He still ends up being the fastest and top Andretti car in the field. Rinus VeeKay recovered from that penalty after contact with Alex Palou in the pits, but it's great that he recovered it to the top 10, but it looked like Rinus was going to be in contention to win until he spun out going out of the pits. Ryan Hunter-Reay in 11th place was leading at one of the red flags, and had this been 1984, he might have won the Indianapolis 500, but 11th for the Dreyer and Reinbold driver, 2014 Indy 500 winner. And then you go to 12th, Callum Eilert. Great strategy from Juncos Hollinger Racing to get track position. This was a track position race, there's no doubt about it. And he finished 12th because they took a gamble on a strategy to get him out front and run the risk of getting run over by the rest of the pack. That didn't happen. Callum comes home 12th. Great finish for Devlin DeFrancesco, 13th overall. Kept his nose clean all day, and that's what a lot of people can't say, including Scott McLaughlin, who was involved in one of those late crashes. Elio Castroneves and Tony Kanaan ends Tony's last Indy 500 in a duel. Tony didn't win out on it. Elio comes across the line in 15th, Kanaan 16th. Marco Andretti didn't have a great day, it has to be said. 17th position. Jack Harvey was the first car 1 lap behind the race. Marco was, of course, the last car on the lead lap. Christian Lundgaard was involved in that silly crash on the main straightaway that involved Ed Carpenter and Benjamin Peterson, who ends up being the highest placed rookie despite being out of the race, but all rookies crashed out of the race. Graham Rahal was also involved in that scuffle. He's 5 laps down. Will Power also 5 laps down. Pato O'Ward sent it, didn't pay off. Going into the turn 3 side by side with Marcus Ericsson, I guess now we know what would have happened if neither of them would have lifted. Into the wall went Pato O'Ward. Simon Pagenaud and Augustine Canapino, who was having a great race up until that point, also involved. Felix Rosenquist crashed while leading. He was my pick to win, and that ultimately ended up with a savage crash for Kyle Kirkwood. Captain Kirk getting upside down, sliding down the back straightaway. A wheel actually came off of the car, cleared the grandstand in turn 2. Thankfully didn't hit any people. There was some other debris from that accident which hit a spectator. They have been checked and released from the infield medical center, so thankfully a safe Indianapolis 500. David Malukas also out of the race after contact. Romain Grosjean, for the 2nd year in a row in his Indy 500 career, crashes out of turn 2. R.C. Anderson, the only official mechanical failure of the day, in 31st for Able Motorsports. Stingray Robb was the first crash of the day in turn number 1, and Catherine Legg, who's really not had a great week, ended up finishing in 33rd position after spinning coming out of the pits, catching the inside wall. The car was unable to be repaired. So let's talk some positives, because I think it's important to give some honey with the bees that I think are about to swarm. And apparently there was bees swarming earlier today, so maybe that makes sense. A great crowd for the Indianapolis 500. Apparently a near sellout, not quite a sellout, but for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, for IndyCar, for the Indy 500, this was a great day from a spectator standpoint. It was great to see the place full, hardly a seat to be found. I think that's great. It felt like the old days, at least from a crowd standpoint, so I think that was absolutely fantastic. It was great to see different folks running up front. AJ Foyt racing competitive. Team Penske clearly back with the win in the Indianapolis 500. All the Arrow McLaren cars running up there, though of course they ran up at the front last year. I thought it was a good race from a competitiveness standpoint. A lot of different people than we're usually used to seeing, so I enjoyed that part of it. The weather was great. I think, since 2007, there hasn't been a rain out here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and that is going to continue at least for this year. And it was a safe race. I mentioned it before. Obviously, the fan was checked and released at the Infield Care Center, but with all the savage crashes that we saw, with all the danger with the debris, everyone got out of this thing okay, especially with the red flags there at the end. I was really kind of nervous the last couple of ones, because these guys, this is the biggest race in the world, and these guys are going to lay it on the line, and sometimes that results in massive, massive accidents and potential injury. So glad everybody got out of this thing safe. So let's get into it. I've had to record this a couple times because I just keep getting distracted, keep getting caught out. I can't get the right words for this. But I will say that 3 red flags in today's Indianapolis 500, setting a record, absolutely ridiculous. Full stop. Ridiculous. The one-lap shootout especially, to me, was NASCAR in the Daytona 500 at its absolute worst. This race should not be the Daytona 500. This is open-wheel car racing at speeds of over 230 miles an hour. Cars going 225 miles an hour into a corner, through a corner, and we saw the consequences with Kyle Kirkwood. earlier today, a car upside down, debris flying over the stands. Thank God it didn't get in. This is serious business. You can't run a circus. You just can't do it. It's too dangerous. It's too risky. And you can do it with stock cars. You can get away with it. I think Daytona's gotten away with it a few times in the last couple of years. But I think they really need to take a look at this. The other thing they need to take a look at is the fact that they're weaving down almost to the pit entrance. Somebody's going to take that attenuator head on, and I really hope the day doesn't happen, because the worst case scenario with all these red flags and restarts, with especially the way the cars race and the way the cars crash these days, quite frankly, is that someone is going to get seriously hurt. And we can complain about how this race played out until the cows come home, but at the very end of the day, everyone got home safe, which is great. Frankly, I think it's a miracle today. The last thing I want to do is talk about someone getting hurt or, even worse than that. So I think there's a lot of rules that are going to need to change as we go into the next year's Indianapolis 500. The number one, to me, is the red flag needs a limitation. This should never happen again where there's 3 restarts, because you look at after the first red flag, or at least one of the red flags, Pato crashed. And if you look at the top 3, it was exactly the same. I don't know how much the rest of the running order changed, but I can tell you this. There were 7 or 8 cars that wouldn't have gotten crashed if the race had ended under yellow that did get crashed because they kept restarting the race. And you get a green flag finish, right? And everyone's going to tell me that, there were 350,000 happy people. Most of those people, and I'm just going to say this, and I hope you accept it for what it is, most of those people are one race fans. They are going to forget about the Indy 500. They're going to forget about IndyCar racing tomorrow, and they're going to move on to the Colts or baseball or whatever, or golf. What are we doing? And I guess, sure, you should try to please them as best you can, but there has to be a limit to it, man. You can't have the Indy 500 at the end of the day have its legitimacy questioned. And for Joseph Newgarden's first win to kind of feel to me or have the bad taste in my mouth like the 2002 Indy 500, or at least to a certain extent, or the 1997 Indy 500, probably a better example, with a one-lap shootout at the end of it, I would prefer that doesn't happen. I don't think you should, because I saw a tweet today that said the Indy 500 should finish under green at all costs. I completely disagree with that, because when you say at all costs, what are you saying? Think about what you're saying when you say that. And I mean, if you accept that, cool. But to me, there's an acceptable level of risk in this thing. And that acceptable level of risk is that these guys are racing inches apart for 500 miles at 240 miles an hour. Is that not enough risk? Is that not enough entertainment? Ridiculous. I think there's a few things that I'd like to see change next year, or at least in the future. I think IndyCar has got to find a way, and I don't know if they'll do this, because I think if you polled people, they would say there was nothing wrong with that. But I think the cornering speeds are too high right now. I think that the straightaway speeds are too low. I think that does 2 things. I think it hurts the racing, and I think it makes the racing more dangerous than it needs to be, because the crashes are at a much higher speed, because 99% of the crashes outside of the ones on a restart on the main straightaway happen in the corners. And when that happens, it takes forever to slow these cars down. And when they're running as close as they are, because they have no straightaway speed and it's all in the corners and they can all run close because there's no drag, and the closing rates are crazy, and the following rates are so closer than we've ever seen, you're going to get crashes like Kyle Kirkwood's crash. And I think that's the other big thing. The cars can follow, but they can't pass. The aero changes didn't fix that. In fact, I think they made it worse in some ways. The cars were super tight, super close the whole race. But the only times we really saw major passing was when either the tires wore to a certain extent, or on the restarts, and that was it. And the rest of the race was fuel saving. And frankly, the fact that the cars in the lead group were letting lap cars by to fuel save, that was silly. I think you should want to lead the Indianapolis 500. I think you should try to want to build as big of a lead as you possibly can. And if the aero package doesn't let you do that, I think you've got a problem. And the final thing with the cars is, I think the cars have a nasty tendency to stick the nose in the air and get up on top of the wall. And we are so lucky we didn't have a catch fence crash today with several different cars, whether it's Kyle Kirkwood getting actually upside down or Pato O'Ward almost getting into the catch fence. I thought we were going to have a Wickens situation with that one. Thank God we didn't. but it was very, very close. I don't know how you fix that. I'm curious about the floor size of the cars. Maybe you could reduce that. I'm not an engineer. All I know is that that is a problem, and it doesn't seem like it's totally been solved. I think it's been reduced a bit because thankfully powder didn't blow over, but clearly there's still some work to be done on the cars to mitigate that sort of a thing. And I think frankly they probably just need a new car, because everyone says, you know, oh, these changes are going to change the drastic direction of this race, and that's just not going to happen. This is the same car it's been since 2012. Yes, they've changed the aero. Yes, it's changed the racing a little bit, but fundamentally the racing is always going to look the same with this chassis, and I think you just got to change the chassis, change the rules. They are changing the rules next year, hybrids next year, so I guess there's the question mark with that. You know, what will the hybrids do to the racing next year? But I guess we'll find out. The 19th win for Roger Penske, the first win for Roger Penske in his ownership of the track. I think that's notable. Again, Joseph Newgarden, deserving winner. I'm not going to take anything away from him. He deserved to win this race today. The circumstances concern me for the future. And, you know, I put my heart and soul and love into this race, and I guess we're going to find out where it goes in the future. But in my opinion, I think they need to change some things. Are they going to agree with me? Probably not. Are they going to change anything? Probably not. But I think there are some rules changes that are needed, and I guess we're just going to have to wait into the future to see those. I will be traveling the next 2 weeks, going to the 24 Hours of Le Mans. No, I will not be covering it. I'm not saying that the camera won't come out, but I'm definitely going to take a couple of weeks and enjoy my first 24 Hours of Le Mans. It's one of the biggest races in the world, and I'm excited to go to it right after the Indianapolis 500. So thank you guys so much for watching this, and I'm sure the discussion is absolutely lit in the comment section. I look forward to reading it. And again, thanks to all of you this month. It's been absolutely fantastic. All your viewership, your support has been absolutely unbelievable. I've seen so many people. I've met so many people this month. Thanks to Joe and Kyle for helping out. I mean, they've done a great job this month. And the fact that we stepped our coverage up, that's not just me. That's a whole team effort, and it's been just great. So the month of May, it's over, and we wait for the Indianapolis 500, the 108th running next year. Joseph Newgarden is your champion, and we've got a lot to discuss in the coming months. We'll see you in the next video.